Hello everyone, continuing Iamblichus' Exhortation to Philosophy text, chapter 12. This chapter is very small, literally like one page or something like this. And because Iamblichus kind of draws a conclusion in relation to happiness, as he says, in that chapter. And in terms of, it's interesting that he would choose chapter 12 for that. Because as we remember in terms of philosophy of numbers, 12 is the completion. So it's quite beautiful how he says, in conclusion, he says at the very beginning of this chapter, and in relation to happiness, this. So I really like that part. Okay, he says, all things are desired because of either two things, philosophy or happiness. And then he says, happiness is either wisdom or it is part of wisdom. It's intellectual insight and or virtue. And this is it for this little part. So now I'm going to interpret it as I understand it. I can see why he says happiness could be virtue. Because if something is bad for us, it would not feel good. I mean, even if it's in the short term, in the shortest of terms, if it's bad for us, it's destructive for us, it cannot be good. It will not bring us happiness. Even things like drugs, for example, when a drug addict takes a drug, for that little slight short moment, that drug is good for him. If it helps him not experience pain, emotional pain that he's experiencing, or negative thoughts. So for that moment, it gives him happiness, even though later there is a lot of unhappiness that follows. So it could be argued that for that tiny moment, it is good for him, which is why he takes it. And if you look at people, the way people behave and live in their life, they usually try to do things which they believe will either bring them happiness, or whether it's buying a new car, a new phone, entering a relationship, or they do things which will bring them some kind of knowledge and truth. So they study things, they learn things, they experiment with themselves to try and figure out who they are and so forth. So that's how I understand this part. Yeah. And also Iamblichus says that to get to this, to truer and truer and more lasting happiness, we can do it only through philosophy. And also that makes sense, because philosophy will teach us the causality of things, what causes what, and in what hierarchy are things caused, who am I, why am I here, and so forth. So we start to align our life accordingly. And as a result, we start to use ourselves in the more correct way. Naturally, happiness will follow, especially if happiness is virtue. We will start to derive more virtue from our being and from interacting with this life. And the result will be we'll feel more happy, more at peace, more meaningful, more fulfilled. So that also makes sense. And he says, I also like this part, he says, philosophy is the science of perfect living. And this is beautiful because he says science, so it's and remember from the previous chapter, Iamblichus splits knowledge and science. And science and knowledge are two things according to him in the previous chapter. And Science is the practical, active use of knowledge. It's the active element when knowledge is passive. And he gives the example of sight. So here Iamblichus says, philosophy is the science of perfect living. The science, active use, and perfect is virtue, perfection, the good. So it's kind of very beautiful. It means philosophy is an active, very active development and use of good living, of living in a way which improves ourselves. This is a very different understanding of philosophy, how typically a modern man understands philosophy. You see how very different it is. Typically when you say to somebody, what is philosophy? They'll say, oh, it's just thinking about different things. Here in this chapter, he says it's not just thinking about things. And essentially that's the point he's trying to make throughout. He says it's a science of perfect living. And if we decipher those words as he uses them throughout the chapters, he means it's a very active physical improvement of life. And exactly the whole point is active, as we see from previous chapter when he talks about what is science. That is a very important thing. So naturally, philosophy will, if we see philosophy in this way and if we use it in this way, of course it will transform our life. Essentially, by transforming our life in a good way towards good things, by applying knowledge and studying things, we are starting to live a philosophical life. And the result of that, of course, is life is becoming more and more good. And of course, happiness will follow from that. You see, there is no, it is a perfect harmony between the two things. Which is why he says happiness could be wisdom itself, or it could be a part of it. Which is a very interesting idea. So that's it for now. Let's do a meditation. I'll do my meditation, and you can do any meditation you want. Just for a couple of minutes. It's always nice to meditate for a minute or a couple of minutes every hour or so, to relax and let go of thoughts, or just to observe what is happening. If there is a lot of tension and anxiety, then at least to notice that, so that then we can start to calm it. Okay, a video will now appear hopefully on the screen. You can click on it and continue watching this channel. Thank you.